The year is 1356. England and France are locked in the brutal 100 Years' War. After a brief truce, forced by the horrors of the Black Death, the conflict reignites. The English king, Edward III, plans a massive campaign. His son, the Duke of Lancaster, would strike from the north, while his other son, Edward, the Prince of Wales, better known to history as the Black Prince, would raid north from the English stronghold of Bordeaux in southwestern France. The English strategy wasn't to seek a decisive battle. Far from it. Their goal was a classic medieval chevauchée, a destructive raid designed to plunder, demoralize the enemy, and assert dominance. With about 8,000 men, mostly local Aquitanian troops, and his famed English longbowmen, the Black Prince set out in August. His raid was devastatingly successful, and by early September he had reached Tours. But his success had attracted unwanted attention. King John II of France, known as John the Good, was not about to let his kingdom be torn apart. He assembled a massive army, perhaps as large as 35,000 men, and crossed the Loire River, effectively cutting off the Black Prince's retreat. The hunter had become the hunted. The English were now bogged down by the very loot they had captured and were forced into a desperate race south. But the French were faster. On September 17th, the English vanguard stumbled right into the French rearguard near Poitiers. The Black Prince knew his exhausted men couldn't outrun the French army, especially not without abandoning their plunder. A fight was inevitable. He quickly scouted for a defensible position, settling on a patch of land near the village of Maupertuis. King John, confident in his overwhelming numbers, was ready to attack. However, a papal envoy, Cardinal de Périgord, intervened, hoping to broker a last-minute peace. The Black Prince, recognizing his perilous situation, made a stunning offer. He would return all captured towns and prisoners, promise not to fight the French king for 7 years, and even pay a large sum of money. But King John, smelling a total victory, demanded the unconditional surrender of the prince and 100 of his top knights. For the Black Prince, this was a step too far. His honor, and that of his men, was not for sale. He refused. While the negotiations bought the English precious time, they weren't idle. They used every moment to fortify their position. It was a tactical masterstroke. His left flank was protected by a creek and marsh, his right by a wagon park. The front of his position was a vineyard on a slope, ending in a thick hedge at the crest. He dismounted his men-at-arms, placing them behind this hedge, and skillfully interspersed his deadly longbowmen on the flanks and forward as skirmishers. It was a death trap, waiting to be sprung. King John, meanwhile, dismissed advice to simply surround the small English force and starve them out. He chose a direct frontal assault. He organized his massive army into 4 divisions, or battles. His plan was to smash through the English lines with his heavily armored knights. He seemed to have forgotten the lessons of the Battle of Crécy, fought just a decade earlier, where this exact tactic had failed catastrophically against English longbows. On the morning of September 19th, the battle began in a strange way. The Black Prince, in a brilliant feint, started moving his wagons as if he were trying to escape. Seeing this, King John hastily ordered a vanguard of 300 elite mounted knights to charge and crush the supposedly fleeing archers. It was a fatal mistake. The English longbowmen unleashed a hailstorm of arrows, cutting the French knights down. Those who weren't killed by the arrows were dispatched on the ground by English knights who charged out from behind the hedge. The Black Prince, seeing his ruse had worked perfectly, quickly brought his main force back into position. The first wave of French infantry, advancing on foot, finally reached the English line, and a furious melee erupted. The English were hard-pressed, but reinforcements from the Prince's other divisions arrived just in time to stabilize the line. The French had committed their first wave and been bloodily repulsed, but the vast majority of their powerful army was still fresh and waiting to attack. The Battle of Poitiers had just begun. The Dauphin Charles, leading the next French division, smashed against the English hedge. The fighting was brutal, a chaotic mess of steel and desperation. The French almost broke through, but Edward, the Black Prince, threw everything he had into the fray, holding back only a final reserve of 400 men. The line held just barely, and the battered French division fell back. The English were exhausted, their archers running low on arrows. If the next French force, commanded by the king's brother, the Duc d'Orléans, had charged then, it would have been over. But seeing their comrades retreat, d'Orléans' entire division inexplicably withdrew from the field. This gave the English a crucial, breathless moment to regroup before the final, largest French force arrived. Led by King John II himself, some 6,000 men marched forward. They were exhausted from marching in heavy armor, but the English were at their absolute limit. Fearing his men couldn't withstand another charge, the Black Prince made a bold, almost reckless decision. He ordered a general advance. His weary knights, infantry, and even the archers who had run out of arrows surged forward to meet the French. Simultaneously, he sent 200 horsemen on a wide flanking maneuver to strike the French from behind. What followed was a desperate brawl in a vineyard. King John himself, swinging a massive battle-axe, fought like a lion in the thick of it. The outcome hung by a thread until the English cavalry slammed into the French rear. The shock was decisive. The French formation shattered and fled. Thousands were captured, including King John, his 14-year-old son Philippe, and a staggering number of French nobility. As the chronicler Froissart noted, it seemed all the chivalry of France was slain or captured that day. The aftermath was catastrophic for France. The Black Prince returned to Bordeaux with his prisoners and loot, and vast fortunes were made from ransoming the captured nobles. With its king imprisoned, the French government collapsed, leading to chaos. For the next decade, English forces and rogue mercenary bands called routiers raided the countryside at will. In 1360, the Treaty of Bretigny was signed. To ransom their king, the French agreed to pay 3 million gold crowns and cede nearly a third of their kingdom, including Aquitaine, to England. King John was eventually allowed to return home, but when one of his sons, held as a hostage for the payment, escaped, John honorably returned to captivity in England, where he died in 1364. Incredibly, the French seemed to learn nothing from this disaster, repeating almost the exact same mistakes 60 years later at the infamous Battle of Agincourt. What a stunning turn of events! The Battle of Poitiers wasn't just a military victory, it reshaped the map of Europe and brought a kingdom to its knees.